Okay, today I'm going to talk about an article I got from the BBC called 10 Simple Ways to Act on Climate Change. I'll link to the article down below in the description of the video, and also fair warning, you're probably going to get more out of this if you just click on the article and read that yourself instead of sitting through this video. I'm not sure I'm going to have much to add to that. So, fair warning, you're probably better off just reading the article instead of listening to me. I'm going to make the attempt though. What I'm trying to do, this project I've started, is every 2 weeks make a video in which I kind of explore, as a matter of kind of self-exploration, what I can do to be more proactive on climate change, because it's an issue that's got me more and more worried. I started this in large part because I don't know what to do. It seems like a huge problem, and it seems like, what do you do? So it's partly a way for me to just explore my confusion, which is another reason why you might want to skip this one. But with the thinking that perhaps something useful will result. So I got this article on the BBC. This article is actually from November 5, 2018, so it's a few months old at this point. Although it was linked to from one of the articles on their main page. I forget what the article on their main page was. The article on their main page was something like, something about like cognitive biases affecting kind of the fight for climate change or something like that. Which might have been another interesting one to talk about. But I saw this and I thought, okay, 10 things we can do, 10 simple ways to act on climate change. I'm going to read this article, explore what these 10 things are. And then I read the article, and I've got to say I'm a little bit disappointed. I expected a little bit better from the BBC. This is kind of what the kids are calling clickbait nowadays, in the sense that the headline here is 10 simple ways to act on climate change. But it is not 10 ways, not by a long shot. It's maybe 4 ways. It's a list of 10, but a lot of this list of 10 is just kind of rhetorical questions, or it's talking about larger societal issues that are difficult for an individual to action. We've got to have both conversations, I know. But as far as kind of 10 simple things, actually kind of rereading this, 10 simple ways to act on climate change, it doesn't say individual, does it? Maybe that was just me reading into it. Anyways, I'm going to go through this and kind of comment on it. Number 1 is a question. What is the single most important thing humanity has to do in the coming years? Turns out it's just to get off of fossil fuels. So get rid of coal, oil, and gas, switch over to renewables like wind, solar, blah, 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 blah. You probably knew that already, but they make a big change that he makes a big case that, this is what needs to be done if we're going to survive the next 50 years. Then number 2 says, well, that doesn't sound like something I can influence, can I? Yeah, you see what I mean? Number 2 is just kind of restating number 1. It's not like a separate thing. That's where I get my complaint about this article. And then it talks about things you can do, putting pressure on governments or on companies. Which I'm going to try and do more to the extent that I understand what's going on. So the Green New Deal I talked about in the last video I did in the series, but it's a little bit, the Green New Deal, there's so much news coverage of it, but it's so very hard to find out like what actually is in that bill, because all the news coverage is just kind of talking about the politics of it. But I'm going to make an effort to kind of try and be more informed about these things. So, kind of writing to the congressman when one of these is coming up for a vote. It also talks about divest out of polluting activities. such as avoiding stocks in fossil fuels. Yeah, good idea. I don't have any stocks at the moment, but somebody else has stocks. Maybe they'd divest out of fossil fuels. Other than that, what's the best daily action I can take? It says the number one thing you can do daily is not drive a car. Now, this is one of those things, right? Like, we all know that in order to solve this climate change thing, it's going to take more than individuals doing individual action. We need mass government action on this. But it sounds like an individual action that could really have a mass effect if we get everyone to do it. Or, I mean, you can never get everyone to do anything, but if we get a lot of people to do it, is just get out of their cars. Now, my own personal situation here, to talk about that. I live in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, in the south of Vietnam. And I live a 40-minute walk away from my work. It's a tropical country, and we're coming into hot season, so it gets hot. So what I typically do is I will typically get a taxi into work. This being Vietnam, you can get a motorcycle taxi or Grab taxis. So I will get a Grab taxi into work and then walk home from work. Logic being kind of a couple of reasons. One is I don't want to show up to work all sweaty, and again, it's a tropical country. It strikes me as unprofessional. And two, the mornings are always, disorganized. I'm not a morning person. I'm always chronically short on sleep as it is, so I don't want to wake up 40 minutes earlier than I have to, especially on days when I have an early morning. So, like at a day when I have to get into work at 7:30, I'm already waking up at 6 a.m. I don't want to wake up at 5:30. That would just be that would be an awful hour to wake up at. But yeah, like I've been saying all along in these videos, this climate change thing is serious. So maybe I should start. The other thing I could try and do is just kind of bring a change of clothes with me to work. And maybe, I don't know, there's no showers at my work, but maybe bring a towel and do kind of a towel bath in the sink. I don't know. Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal. I think, I'm going to go off on another tangent here. I think we've kind of, in the modern age of air conditioning and driving, we've kind of gotten into this idea that it's unprofessional to sweat. Like, you don't want to show up at work kind of all sweaty. What are you, unprofessional? And I think that's, like 100 years ago, like when the French were in Vietnam or whatever, there were no air conditioners, and the motorized, I guess they had motorized cars 100 years ago. But, like a lot of people would be walking in or taking a bicycle or something. And it's a tropical country, and I think people would just accept that you were sweating. And that wasn't viewed as like some affront to like your job or something to come in a little bit sweaty. I think as a society, we may have to move back towards that norm and just kind of accept the fact that people are going to be cycling into work or walking into work, and they might arrive a little bit sweaty, and you're allowed to be sweaty. The problem is being the first guy who tries to make that change, though, huh? Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the point is that maybe this is something I can improve on. Maybe I can start walking to work and also walking back from work as well. Now, I'm in a fortunate position in that I can walk to work. It's a longer walk. It's like 40 minutes, but it's doable. And plus, it's exercise, right? There's all this research on the health benefits of walking, so that's great. In a lot of American cities, you can't walk to where you're going. Like, certainly where I grew up, from my house in the suburbs to get to kind of any place of employment would be like hours of walking. Across some very busy, like 4-lane streets where the cars are zipping through at 60 miles per hour. So in that respect, the cities here in Southeast Asia are set up much better for walking than kind of your typical American sprawl where I grew up, and where I think it's really almost impossible to walk anywhere. Both kind of like the sheer distance between the suburbs and a place of employment. But also just, there's no sidewalks in a lot of these places. There's just kind of a drainage ditch on the side. You have to cross all these 4-lane roads with the cars just zipping through. And that kind of stuff you don't see here in Saigon or Phnom Penh or a number of cities here in this area. It is difficult to be a pedestrian here in the sense that pedestrians are not afforded the same level of respect they are back in America, right? Like if you're America and you're a pedestrian crossing the street on a crosswalk, other drivers are like, oh, it's a crosswalk, it's a pedestrian, I should yield. Not in Vietnam. Nor is the sidewalk sacred. During rush hour, the motorcycles just zoom up onto the sidewalk. Boy, the amount of times I've almost been hit on the sidewalk by a speeding motorcycle in either Vietnam or Phnom Penh or Kuala Lumpur. It's endemic in this part of the world. So that's a problem. But you don't have these huge like 4-lane highways like dividing like the middle of a city like you would in America. So it's possible to walk places. Like the cities are walkable distances and you don't have these huge mega roads. So in that sense, I think walking is much more doable here than it is back home. I've lived in a number of countries throughout my life now, and in my experience, in every country, the pedestrian is second-class citizen. If you have a car or a motorcycle, you are more important than the pedestrian, and just nothing is designed with the pedestrian in mind, and the pedestrian is always expected to kind of look out for themselves and avoid the other vehicles. So that's another societal change. But to the extent that we can walk, if you can walk more, you should, I guess. Okay, number 4 is another rhetorical question about renewable energy. Number 5 is interesting. Can I change my diet? So they go through this thing about how cattle are a huge cause of global warming. They said if cattle were their own nation, they would be the world's 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the US. And the reason is because we feed them kind of lots of maize and corn, which is inefficient. It would be better to just grow the maize and corn and feed it to people. Because the people clear forests for cattle to graze, I think particularly rainforests, and because like of all those cow burps and cow farts, right? Which sounds ridiculous, but is apparently a real thing. Like this is a real concern, like this is one of the big contributors to global warming. Now, somewhere where I get a little bit lost in this article is they talk about the problem of cattle, but then their solution is to kind of eat less meat. And I thought the problem was with cattle. What if I just ate chicken? And they actually don't go into that in this article. I don't know, maybe chicken also has its own carbon footprint or something like that. It sounds like the big problem is cattle, though. So a couple points in relation to this. First one, the vegetarian issue has a lot of people with very strong opinions on both sides. I'm probably going to get both sides mad at me. But here's my position. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a scientist. I've hung out with a lot of hippie people, leftist people who have been vegans or vegetarians. And a number of them have had some sort of health problem where the doctor has said to them, all right, look, you have to eat meat like a little bit, or we've got to get you off of this diet, or you've got to take this pill or something. And that's caused me to believe that vegetarianism or veganism is not ideal for the human body in terms of nutrition. Some people want to do it for ethical reasons. And then fine. I mean, you're making a trade-off, right? You're saying, like, I'm not going to eat animals and I'm prepared to accept the health detriments because I want to make an ethical stand or whatever. Yeah, but I don't think it's the ideal thing for the human body to go completely vegan. But here's my theory, and this is not based on any science or nutrition or schooling or whatever. This is just what sounds intuitive to me. Like, our caveman ancestors did not eat meat with every meal, right? They were out on the African savannah or whatever, you know, they had to hunt the woolly mammoths or the bison or the zebras. And, hunting was a big deal. It took like a bunch of them to coordinate. And so, they get like these big, they'd be able to make a hunt once in a while. And then the majority of their diet was just kind of gathering the berries and roots and kind of nuts and berries and stuff that was around. So, I don't think you need meat every day. I think if you eat meat just a few times a week, you should be good. You certainly, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a nutritionist, but this is just what seems intuitive to me. I don't see any reason why you would need meat with every meal. And a lot of Americans do eat kind of meat with every meal. So my own thing is I quite happily go for a few meatless meals. And I might only eat meat with one meal a day. And that's kind of my own contribution to it. And I figure kind of if everyone who was eating meat 3 times a day just cut down to 1 time a day, that would help a lot. We don't need to kind of go all or nothing on this. We can kind of make compromises with it. Now, the other thing, getting back to what I was saying about cattle specifically being the problem here, if cattle are the big problem, I could quite happily give up beef. I mean, I like a good beefsteak as much as the next person, but if you're in McDonald's and you have a choice between a beef hamburger and a chicken burger, and you know that the chicken has a lot less kind of carbon footprint on it, I could go for the chicken. I mean, I could give up beef, I think. And I think what I'm going to do going forward, like, I'm not going to throw beef out if, like, I'm at a dinner party and somebody serves it to me or something like that. But what I am going to do is the next time I'm in a fast food restaurant or any type of restaurant, I'm going to order the chicken instead of the beef. That seems like a very painless thing for me to do. Or the pork instead of the beef. Or, I won't order the beef. Yeah. Now, here's what I would have a hard time giving up, though. I'd have a hard time giving up cheese. Oh, I love cheese. I haven't actually been drinking a lot of milk. I grew up on milk. Used to drink loads of milk as a kid and as a teenager because I thought it was healthy and would help me grow strong and stuff like that. Then I had a friend who was, one of these guys who was big on kind of the anti-dairy kick. Like, cow milk is designed for baby cows. It's not designed for the human body. It's not good for you. He was always going on about that. And he got me thinking. And again, I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know. And I know both sides of the argument go back and forth on this. But I've largely stopped drinking milk since then. I mean, I'll still have it if somebody puts it in front of me. but I've not been going out of my way to buy milk or drink a lot of it. Yeah, although, actually, come to think of it, no, actually, sorry, I skipped that thought. I've not been drinking a lot of milk. I haven't had any kind of calcium deficiencies or something that I know of. But cheese, I just love cheese. I like yogurt as well, but cheese would be hard for me to give up. But, I don't know, maybe I should really try and cut down on my cheese. I mean, it's not supposed to be good for you anyways. I'm in Vietnam, where the selection of cheese is very limited. Cheese is not very popular in Asian countries, so you don't have like those racks of cheese like you do in the US supermarket. You just have like one type of cheese. But if I was living in a place that had a big selection of cheese, like the US, I guess go for goat's milk cheese could be an alternative. Okay, next thing here, flying habits. Yeah, question is, how harmful are my flying habits? And it seems like flying habits are quite harmful. Yeah, it sounds like the baby's crying. I'm going to take this into the shower. Or no, maybe she stopped. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, it seems like flying habits are quite harmful. So they're recommending that you cut down on flying, which is what I've been hearing this for a long time. Like flying is a huge cause of CO2 emissions, and like it doesn't seem like it, does it? Because you think, well, okay, like there's a carbon footprint, but you know there's like, I don't know, how many people are on a plane? Like they really pack you in there, don't they? It's got to be like 100 people on a plane or something or more. So you figure the carbon footprint is being divided by all of you like as a form of public transportation. But apparently these planes just use so much fuel that even divided among all the people in the plane is still like a huge carbon footprint for everyone. So flying is supposed to be a big cause of carbon emissions, and they recommend that everyone kind of cut down on their flying. Now, that sounds very simple, but the big problem with that is that I think most people who are flying do so because they think it's a necessity. Sorry, I am actually moving into the shower this time. The baby's crying out there. So, like, for example, nobody says, oh, not doing anything Tuesday. I think I'll just take an 8-hour flight to Houston, right? Like, people hate flying, right? I mean, they fly because the alternatives are even worse, like, you know, being in a car for 2 days. But, you know, the security is such a pain in the neck, and the seats are uncomfortable, and those airports, and blah, 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 blah. And especially if you're making a long flight, like, you know, if you're I'm living in Vietnam at the moment. You know, to fly from America to Vietnam is just a terrible flight. You're on, you know, and you're just cramped in those small seats for so long. Nobody does this for fun. Everybody who's getting on that plane thinks they have a good reason to, and that to me is kind of the problem with telling people to fly less. I mean, that being said, yeah, I guess fly less if you can. I mean, I guess the obvious thing, people who are flying for business have very little control over this. People who are flying for vacation obviously have more control. Now, yeah, I guess here's where we get into some difficult trade-offs, because we've kind of been growing up in an era where international travel has become quite affordable and quite common, and kind of the ethos has been, you owe it to yourself to see different parts of the world. You know, it's kind of living a full life and broadening your horizons and getting out there and stuff like that. As someone who's spent my whole adult life living abroad, I guess I've embodied that to a large extent. Yeah, can we now say to the younger generation, stay home? That trip to Europe isn't worth it. Or I don't know. Yeah, these are where the kind of the tough calls get made, I guess. But I guess for people who vacation frequently, it might be something to consider going local for a lot more of your vacations. Like you still get the gap year in Europe, but then kind of once that's over, for your next several vacations, go local. Yeah, talking about shopping here and buying kind of food that's in season, and that's a good one. Number 8, how many children should I have? So they talk about having fewer children. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll just give my own opinion on this. I think that population is a problem. Overpopulation is going to be a huge problem, but to the extent that each human is a producer of carbon, any population growth is going to exacerbate the global warming problem. So I would say my own personal philosophy is that 2 kids should be the limit, because at 2 kids you're not contributing to population growth. You're contributing maybe to population stability, but if you and your wife, kind of assuming you both have those 2 kids together, and those the 2 kids for both of you, then you're not contributing to population growth. Now, I have a lot of family members who have 3 kids or more, I think in the case of some cousins. So I really hope they're not watching this video. If you have more kids, well, if you have more kids, you've already had them, huh? So too late now. And I don't want to demonize anyone who's had more kids, but I think if you haven't had kids yet, I think that's something to think about. All my friends and family who've had more than 2 kids, I love them all dearly, and I love your kids dearly. Going forward, though, this next generation, I think the responsible thing to do is to only have 2 kids, and that's my plan, is to limit it to 2 kids. Okay, number 9 here is a rhetorical question about how much difference can I really make. Oh, and number 10 is good. Number 10 kind of gets to that question I've been talking about all along. What if I can't avoid that flight or cut down on driving? Apparently there's a link to the UN site where they give you projects that you can donate to offset your carbon emission. And there's even a calculator where you can calculate what your carbon emission is, so you know how much to donate to offset it. Donating to renewable energy projects around the world. I was having a look at this just now, and it looks like this might be really user-friendly. Donating money, I'm always kind of scared of scams because there's so many scams out there, but this is the UN, right? So it's got to be reputable, I'm assuming, kind of all these projects they're endorsing. Even though a number of them are in Southeast Asia, and I know because I've been living in Southeast Asia that a lot of corruption goes on in this part of the world. I don't know. I'm going to assume these projects are all legit. So like if you have to make a flight, like I'm living in Vietnam, so I have to make a flight when I want to go visit home, and I want to go visit home every so often. Then you can go to this website and kind of calculate your carbon emissions and then make a donation to one of these projects to offset it. So I'll link to that down below. So yeah, those are just my rambling, incoherent thoughts about this article. Sorry about that.